and there are less than 2 million in formal work. Unfortunately, much of our preoccupation seems to be with this small group in the formal sector. It is time for us all to bring more of our people into the formal sector. It would indeed be in everybody's interest to do so. The first order of business, therefore, must be to get our economy out of the doldrums and create the atmosphere for our entrepreneurs to bring on the jobs. There are things the government must do, and there are things the citizens as a whole, and organized labor in particular, must do. We in government have set about our task with zeal. Our first budget, the Asempa budget, has set out clearly the roadmap to bringing prosperity to Ghana. Taken important steps to create an enabling environment for the private sector to flourish and create jobs. We have reduced taxes, including taxes on kayaye. Inflation is on the decline. Interest rates are on the decline. And relative stability of the exchange rate has been restored. The budget also reduced the fiscal deficit from 2016 to a projected 6.5% in 2017, bringing Ghana back to the path of fiscal discipline. Macroeconomic stability, which is key to economic growth and job creation, is therefore being restored. We must make it easier for people who want to set up businesses to do so and remove the impediments in the way of entrepreneurs. In jobs and expand the formal sector of the economy. We're also upholding our social commitments. As from the next academic year, beginning in September, our free SHS policy will kick into action. We're also making a determined effort to ensure the financial sustainability of the National Health Insurance Scheme. Mr. Chairman, Secretary General, while the government has work to do, we have to accept that the workforce must accept its responsibility and contribute its part. I hope I'm speaking among friends and will thus be allowed to do some plain talking. When efforts are made to improve pay levels without commensurate improvement in productivity, the results inevitably point to macroeconomic instability for our country. It means the size of the formal sector shrinks even further. I do not suggest the current pay levels are satisfactory in all sectors of our economy, but I'm saying that productivity levels and work attitude are unsatisfactory in all levels of the economy. I note the carefully chosen theme for the 2017 May Day celebration, Ghana's 60 years on, mobilizing for future through the creation of decent jobs. I'm happy to receive the assurance of the Secretary General that the theme signals the intention of workers to rally behind government for faster economic growth driven by decent jobs. I welcome very warmly this expression of support, for it encourages me to continue even more firmly on the path on which we have embarked. Fellow Ghanaians, it is no secret that of all government's objectives, job creation ranks at the top of our priorities, as reflected by the title of the MPP's manifesto, Change, an Agenda for Jobs. This, undoubtedly, is the thrust of the social contract. The MPP has long recognized that the severity of joblessness in Ghana demands bold, innovative, and urgent steps to ameliorate the situation. That is why in government, we have taken the step of rolling out promptly the program for planting for food and jobs, which I recently launched in Goso in the Brong-Ahafo region. We are committed to ensuring that the target of 750,000 direct and indirect jobs earmarked under this intervention will come to fruition. Additionally, the One District, One Factory, One Village, One Dam, the Zongo Development Fund, and the equivalent of $1 million per year per constituency policies are all being pursued to stimulate job creation opportunities across the country. I'm happy to learn that the TUC and organized labor have fully endorsed the policies and have pledged support to ensure the attainment of the goal for the creation of decent jobs for all Ghanaians. This pledge of support is sweet music to my ears. Government, through the Ministry of Employment and Labor Relations, is also in the process of reviewing YEA models with a view to introducing new employment models and expanding existing ones to create over 200,000 jobs for the youth. We have to rectify the serious neglect of skills training by modernizing and strengthening technical vocational education and training institutions. We have to formalize all forms of apprenticeships and master craftsmanships and promote entrepreneurship. Through these new areas of commitment, government intends to address the long prevailing skills mismatch between majority of school leavers and industry requirements. We have to tailor the curriculum of skills development and job learning based institutions to current industrial needs, both at the enterprise level and the job market. As a signatory to the ILO Convention on the Fundamental Principle of Rights at Work, we should ensure the strict enforcement of occupational health and safety standards and extend social protection laws in the protection of workers' rights at the workplace. In this regard, I'm charging the Ministry of Employment and Labor Relations to work through its tripartite constituents, namely Organized Labor and Employment Association, to give priority to these very important issues in order to create an enabling environment for sustainable growth, high productivity, and to attract investment opportunities for job creation and economic development. I've heard you, Mr. Secretary General, and your lamentations about how badly off present-day workers are in comparison with Ghanaian workers in the past. We do have lots of problems: bad roads, traffic jams, high electricity tariffs, inadequate housing, and of course, low wages. But that is only half the story. There's another side to our story that we have to face up to as well. Some of those workers of old would not recognize the present-day practices at our workplaces. Ghanaian artisans, for example, used to have an enviable reputation around the region. Our carpenters, masons, mechanics, plumbers, tailors were much sought after. They took pride in their work and improved upon their own set standards every time they took on a new job. How come that old, very old classroom blocks withstand storms and heavy rainfall, while the roofs of nearby newly built ones are ripped off regularly? How come that we build roads that are expected to last for at least 5 years and they do not make it through one rainy season? Before they fall, they fail, and potholes appear. The workers on the roads, the contractors, and all the consultants all conspire to deliver the shoddy work that prevents us from getting to where we ought to be. We all avoid very carefully any mention of the workplace attitudes that retard our progress. I've said it at another forum, but I think it bears repeating. We arrive at work late and then spend the first hour in prayer. We are clock watchers and leave in the middle of critical work because it is the official closing time. Everything comes to a stop when it rains, and we seem to expect the rest of the world also to stop. We have no respect for the hours set aside for work. We pray, we eat, we visit during working hours. We spend hours chatting on the telephone when customers are waiting to be served, thereby increasing our labor costs. We take a week off for every funeral, and then we wonder why we are not competitive. The service that we provide in our hospitality industry does not match that of our competitors, and many of us have sadly come around to accept poor service as the norm. There is a particularly pernicious attitude to property that we find at work. There's the petty stealing of paper, envelopes, tea, milk, and other equipment. There's the reckless use of office vehicles. Employees show no inclination to protect the things that are in the offices and factories, and extreme reluctance to stand up for what we know to be right in our workplaces in general. To make the changes we all want, then we have to start with a change in attitude to work. Government is ready to do its part, and I'm counting on you, Secretary General, to lead the campaign for a change in attitude to work and increase in productivity. I have taken note of organized labor's request to discuss a number of issues with government in the interest of industrial peace and harmony. Key among them is the issue of the sale or privatization of ECG and the fight against illegal mining activities, popularly called galamsey. We have stated that we are taking a second look at the ECG compact. We're driven by two considerations. We are as concerned as the workers that the reforms should not lead to involuntary job losses, and we should find a long-term solution to the nation's electricity problems. In this regard, government has amended the terms of the concession agreement to require that 1. Ghanaians own at least 51% of the concession. 2. There should be no involuntary layoffs as a result of the concession. 3. The term of the concession will be reduced from 25 to 20 years. We believe that these amendments meet the aspiration of Ghanaians in protecting the jobs of workers and in assuring the control and viability of ECG. And then there is Galamsey, the word, the subject of the moment. I have not yet met anyone who is engaged in Galamsey, who is satisfied with the degradation of our lands and our environment that currently comes with Galamsey. We are not fighting to put people out of work by seeking to end Galamsey. Since the Almighty blessed us with precious minerals, there will be mining in our country. But this present generation does not own the earth. We hold the lands in trust for generations, yet unborn, and we cannot destroy it. Small-scale mining to be conducted in a sustainable manner. All the indications are that the Galamseyers, those who undertake the hazardous and tedious work, do not make much money, as they are routinely cheated from getting a fair price for the gold they find. We are therefore encouraging the establishment of gold refineries, which will pay fair prices to the miners. The sustainable small-scale mining regime we envisage will protect our environment and protect the workers as well. I want to acknowledge with special thanks the support and role being played by the media in this fight against Galamsey. The media, with the overwhelming support of well-meaning citizens, have given true meaning to the call for all, quote, to be citizens and not spectators, unquote. Secretary General, in his speech, alluded to the sad issue of child labor, and especially its manifestation in some key sectors of our economy. It is a shameful phenomenon and an indictment on all of us, and it's time to stop hiding under a so-called cultural practice to find excuses. Children are children. They are our most important asset and deserve to be protected from being exploited in the labor field. It is worth pointing out that if we do not stop these shameful practices, there are global agencies that have determined to institute punitive measures against us in some critical industries, which would lead to the loss of markets for our goods and the loss of jobs. Under my watch, government will work with all partners towards the goal of eliminating child labor. We will work to ensure that our children do not work under hazardous conditions to support themselves and their families. We will work to eliminate, in particular, the disgraceful practice of forcing children into fishing and illegal mining activities. It is important to keep reminding ourselves that child labor and child trafficking are not only crimes, but now also pose veritable threats to our national security. We all have a responsibility to protect our children from the criminality of child labor. Let me at this stage acknowledge the efforts of my wife, Rebecca, for the determined manner in which she's speaking out against the evil of child labor and child trafficking, and for the memorandum she has signed with her counterpart in Côte d'Ivoire to this effect. I also share the concerns of organized labor on the deplorable state of our prisons. Say the state of our prisons and mental health institutions simply a reflection of the general state of affairs in our country. Accommodation is inadequate and mostly unsuitable in and out of prison or the asylum. We could say the same for many other sectors, but we need not accept such a state of affairs as our lot in life. I ask for your support to grow, to work our economy and change these things. Mr. Secretary General, the subject of nurses and teachers featured a lot in the recent election. There was the vexed question of their allowances. We promised to restore them, and we have. Then there was the equally vexed question of a good number of them remaining unemployed after completing their training. We work on this as well. I am aware of the recent sit-ins in the Ministry of Health by a group of nurses and midwives who are yet to be placed. I'm also aware there's uneasy calm within some occupational and professional groups among public sector workers. We use this platform to assure you that my government is your government, and we are listening to your concerns. We are determined that together we will find sustainable solutions. Ghana needs all its trained manpower to be at work. We're determined to use all available tools to fight the canker of corruption, for we know how much it destroys our chances at progress and prosperity. The Office of Special Prosecutor is going to be established so that the prosecution of corruption is taken out of political controversy and thereby enhance the integrity of the rule of law. I want to bring another important reform to your notice. Through a payroll audit conducted by the Ministry of Finance, under the impressive leadership of Ken Oforiatta, in the last 2 months, some 26,589 workers' salaries have been suspended from the April 2017 payroll. These, quote, workers, unquote, have not come forward to be biometrically verified by SNCC, despite numerous calls by the accountant, the controller and accountant general to do so. The idea of biometric verification is essentially to isolate ghost names from the payroll. The cost of maintaining these 26,589 names on government payroll is 160 million cedis per month. The government stands to save the country over 433 million Ghana cedis on this year's budget alone by this exercise. Other efforts aimed at cleaning the payroll being undertaken by government include: 1. A new payment system that will integrate the GIPS payment platform for salaries to be paid directly to workers without any manual intervention, as always has been the case. Implemented on a test basis this month, envisaged to cover finally all workers in June 2017. 2. SNET has been asked to create a separate database for the controller biometrically registering close to 200,000 Cap 30 workers. Government payroll will now have a direct interface with this and the existing database, thus reducing payroll fraud to the barest minimum. This will provide a complete end-to-end visibility of the entire payroll system while having a seamless integration between payroll costs and the government's general ledger. If we are to pay workers well, we must do at least 2 things: get rid of ghost-net ones and enhance the efficiency of genuine ones. Fellow Ghanaians, I want us all in Ghana to turn a new leaf, to turn a new page in the history of our nation. I want us to believe in our capacity to build a modern, developed, progressive nation and free ourselves from the mindset of dependence, aid, charity, and handouts. Build a new Ghanaian civilization where there's fair opportunity for all in education and health, where hard work, enterprise, and creativity are rewarded, where there is an abundance of good jobs with decent pay, and where there is a dignified retirement for the elderly, and where there is a social safety net for the vulnerable and disadvantaged. The founders of our nation chose the Black Star as part of our national colors for a purpose. They saw us as a shining example to the black peoples of the world of what a free, dedicated, enterprising Ghanaian people can do to build a society the equal of anywhere on the face of the planet. Let us be up and doing. Our destiny beckons. I apologize for my cold and cough. I salute and pay tribute to all workers and wish you all a happy May Day. Thank you all for your attention, and may the good Lord bless us all and our homeland Ghana and make us great and small. Yeah.
So the band will give us the when the workers' sun shall rise, there can be no longer problem. Yet the force on every speaker than the favor day, but the union makes us strong. Solidarity. Shall we please raise our
child labor, because we know that for every single child in employment is the denial of an adult that should be in that employment. So he also talked about that. He talked about social security. He talked about the ECG issue, which is an issue dear to the heart of organized labor, and raised other issues of the bad attitudes of work. And sometimes you're in business and your attitude is a very poor one, and you tend to wonder why you're not making progress, or you can't beat the competition. That is because of your attitude and some of the measures you adopt on the job, which he says are very bad ones.
Hey! Solidarity forever, solidarity forever, but the union makes us strong.
Indeed, indeed.
Solidarity forever, solidarity forever, solidarity forever, but the union makes us strong. Choboy, we will give one big bossa to the president for the Assembly speech. When I say bossa, you all say bossa. Ready? Go! Bossa! Again, go! Bossa! We thank His Excellency very much. Now, the rest of the program lineup. Please, shall there be some silence?
Strong of workers' rights. Yes.
Are we doing that?
Well, not to the best of our ability, unfortunately. Not to the best, because we could do a whole lot better, and there's plenty of room to improve. And the sky can only be our limit. You know, or sometimes we're told the sky is not even the limit. We could go beyond.
So the president in that address virtually telling all of us that we should help the government of the day in getting the job done, especially for workers, finding that right blend between what we expect of government to do and also bringing in many in the informal sector into the formal sector today. Some of the major highlights that we have been seeing in that speech there. And on the part of communication, he douses all the talk that we may have had with why he was coughing almost throughout the address by saying he's sorry for his cold and the cough. So that virtually douses any kind of analysis that should have gone in that direction as to why he has been struggling with this since he took office as president at the Black Star Square. But shortly we will be getting some updates for you from across the country, in Kumasi, in Takrade, in other parts of the country, Ghana, where equal commemorations have been done at the Jubilee Parks across the country. But Kemini, we can return to the studio, can't we, and do some quick post-address analysis as well.
I think the president also sets the tone for our next line of conversation when he talks about how productivity at all levels of the country is very poor. Yes, so in the studio with us is Dean of the Institute of Local Governance Studies, Dr. Osai Odro. Well, I'd tell you who else is in the studio with us. There's also Joseph Aite, who is a former chairperson for the National Labour Commission. You meet them again in a bit, but let's go back to the Black Star Square and bring you some sights and sounds from there.
From 2015 to date, you have also been a member of the executive board of TUC Ghana from 2012 to date. In recognition of your loyalty and sterling qualities as a dedicated and selfless trade unionist, the National Executive Council of the Public Services Workers Union present to you this award. Congratulations. We will respectfully invite the President of the Republic to present this award. No, what is the shaking on? Of ICU. Sister Gertrude Amu was born on 27th of June 1966 in Greater Accra region. and started her working career with the Industrial and Commercial Workers Union in Accra. By dint of hard work, you were promoted in 2000 organizer, and in 2015 you were promoted to your current position of Senior Administrative Officer. Because of your rich experience, commitment, maturity, and confidentiality in handling very important documents, you have been the secretary to 2 Secretary Generals. Sister Gertrude Amu, in recognition of your undoubtful commitment and immense contribution over the years towards the growth and development of the Union, ICU Ghana confers on you the 2017 May Day Award. Congratulations. The third one goes to Brother Francis Ofosu Tyron of Nagrat. This citation is given in honor of Brother Francis Ofosu Tyron in recognition of the invaluable contributions you made to the development of Nagrat. You are a Pania Regional Chairman of Nagrat, Ghana, and throughout your 6 years in office as the Greater Accra Regional Chairman, you have never lacked the proficiency in leadership. As your services to the association are incalculable and you will forever be remembered by posterity. As we celebrate your success today, we pray that you continue your meritorious service wherever you may be, and may your contribution to humanity forever be remembered. Congratulations. Now we are going to call on other awardees to come and then have a handshake. But we'll respectfully invite the Vice President of the land to join the President, the Minister of Labor, so that they will have a handshake. Brother Albert Yabua, Sister Justina Arthur, Sister Agnes Kwashi, Brother Dramani Salifu, Brother Nobel Akabotu Senalo, Brother Franklin Owusu Ansa, Brother Zakaria Mohammed, Sister Patricia Ofosu, Sister Evelyn Aboga, Brother Peter Mochian, Aka Ando, Brother Ernest Mawunyo Akadesi, Brother Lawrence Osekufo, Hajia Andani Suma, Sister Alberta Agata Kofi, Dr. Ebenezer Nathaniel Ashley, Sister Gertrude Abeble, Brother Kwame Kuma, Brother Jonathan Kotoku, Brother Augustine Apia, Brother Jonathan Kobna, Frempong Mansun, Sister Elfrida Kwabiaba Ogo, Sister Joanna Hammond, Brother Joseph Tandani Zahaka, Brother Alaji Isa Abubakar, Brother John Bafu Asrifi, Brother Joseph Akwesi Bewa, Sister Favor Agbevohia, Brother Solomon Owusu, Brother Thomas Kweku Sasu. Congratulations to all of you.
Excellent brains in management.
So we are going to have the group photo.
So I'm surprised you're saying this.
Our work culture is bad, our attitudes are bad, and then our managerial skills are bad.
You know, Eddie, just to continue from where you left off, it's very different when you go abroad. When a Ghanaian, you see a Ghanaian abroad working, they virtually break their backs, working 3-4 jobs in between, just to make sure that they make ends meet.
So with the pictures that we're seeing on your screens right now on GH1 television and listening to us also on Star FM, it's now time for the workers to be appreciated, many of them being given awards for their outstanding contributions to the development of this country in many spheres of endeavor. As we've seen, the president presented one of the awards, many others more to follow, as he is continuing to shake their hands to, in essence, say a very big thank you to them for their years of contribution to the development of this country in the many areas where they find themselves.
Let's go on with our discussion on the back of the president's speech at this year's May Day commemoration at the Black Star Square. With us in the studio, if you just tune in there, you may not have met them, but there's the Dean of the Institute of Local Government Studies, Dr. Odrosai, and former chairman for the National Labour Commission, Joseph Aite. You heard the speech. I'll start with you, Mr. Aite. What did you pick from it?
Essentially, the economy and relationship to the workforce, how he is expecting that from their reaction to his campaign message, one factory, one district, and all that, and the way they're going to respond to this by their current attitude. His promise also about the allowances that have been outstanding for certain areas which he would be paying or has started paying, which should then push the workforce to deliver as he expects. On the whole, the relationship between him, what may be as a government now and since he came into office, is such that there is virtually a honeymoon period. And that honeymoon period, from his speech, is such that they are going to cooperate with him to achieve the aims that he has for the nation by way of work.
Dr. Josai, the president made a lot of points about productivity and how his administration was going to ensure that productivity in the public sector is better. Your thoughts on that?
I think it's a very important statement, because many a time we try to connect the reward system in the public sector as against the productivity. And people will say that the quality of productivity, even the level of productivity, is very low. Yet people are being paid. So if the president has made this assurance that his government is going to make sure that productivity improves, then it means the president will have to move a step further by ensuring that we put in place a quality assurance system, a performance management system that would ensure that public service workers deliver on their mandate.
But not to cut you, the point you make there about the president making good on that promise, we know there are bodies already in place that should be doing this job. Fill us in. Which bodies are supposed to do what at what level of local government, and why that is not happening?
There are two levels. You know, in Ghana at the moment, we have the local government service responsible for staff working at the regional coordinating council and the district assemblies. And then we have the national level actors at the ministry, department, and agencies whose activities falls within the ambit of the Office of Head of Civil Service. These two bodies are expected to ensure that they implement appropriate performance management systems that would ensure that officers working at the national and subnational level works to increase productivity, so that they would justify why they should be paid the salaries they are paying. But unfortunately for us, I think they are working, but they could have done better.
But if they are, there won't be a need for this call, will there?
No, but I think they are doing it, but they have zeroed onto an individual. Maybe they work and make sure that they measure the performance of an individual, and erroneously we judge the performance of the individual as the performance of the organization. For instance, the head of civil service has a performance management system that assesses the performance of the chief directors of the various ministries. But I think that you have to measure the performance of the ministry in its entirety, because it is the collective input of the workers in the ministry that leads to the overall input or output of the ministry. So I think we just have to reorganize the public sector performance management system again, and then make sure that we will be able to connect input to output, that is reward system to productivity.
Okay. Mr. Aite, just before you take leave of us this morning, I just want to understand, based on the conversation we've had, the NLC as a body plays a role. You've been there before. As we look into the future, what must change first with the management of the body and how efficient that commission should be?
Yeah. As to the management of the body, you will see that there are 7 commissioners who are working at any given moment. They are all part-time people, and they are able to sit effectively on Wednesdays to deliberate on issues that have come before them. As the complaints increase, you will find that there might be the need perhaps to increase the number or go on to the regional committees that have been proposed under the law. For more than 10 years, the regional committees are not working. So that if anybody has a problem from Bolgatanga, Takoradi, who everywhere, they have to come to Accra.
10 years, that's 1 decade.
Yes.
Why?
Because those who are in charge, who must release the money for this to be done, are not. I'll give an example of Takoradi, for instance. There was that urge or pressure to set up the Takoradi committee. The unions nominated somebody who could serve on it. The employers nominated somebody to serve on it. And you were left with government to nominate someone to serve on this body. For more than 6 years, government was not able or willing to nominate anybody. We heard from the grapevine that the allowance then being paid was so low that nobody was prepared
to serve the job.
That's it. And if that happens, you can imagine, then the whole problem goes on like that. So that is one way of going around it. Either you increase the number of commissioners or make sure that the regional committees are working. That's the way to go.
Okay, that's for the question of management.
Yes.
But the efficiency of the commission is another matter. As you've explained to us in the past, giving the commission the right tools and logistics has always been a problem.
Yes.
How can we change that narrative?
How can we change it? There must be a way of convincing government which must supply the logistics to go ahead to do so. Some had proposed that the unions perhaps should make some contribution, and management, organized labor should make some contribution, and employers should also make some contribution. But all over the world, it was found out that the normal thing is for the state itself to provide for the needs of the commission so that it can work without any sort of pressures.
Why would an African government want to do that? Because then, in our own case, strengthening the Labor Commission means that strengthening, the institution that can call it to order when it comes to labor issues. So yes. Why will any
be motivated African government
to do it? Absolutely.
Yeah. It would look like it's an impossible point, but you will appreciate that this body wasn't there previously. Under the old law, Industrial Relations Act and so on, there was to be a tribunal which would perform a similar function, with a judge from the courts sitting as chairperson with representatives from organized labor and from government. It never came on, and you never got any good reason why it wasn't coming on. So when this new law was being fashioned, it was felt that this would be a way of strengthening that concept. So I would say that it had been an improvement on the previous one.
But how many years down the line you realize that the intent is far from the reality?
That is so. How many years down the line the intent is far from reality? Because governments come in, governments know what they must do best,
but they don't do it.
But they don't do it sometimes. She was raising the issue of African governments. How do you expect them to do it? After all, we've got judges, the judiciary is there. We've got other agencies that are performing some other quasi-judicial functions all over. So I should think in course of time, it may not be immediate, but in course of time, when we have studied our shortcomings, when we begin to feel that improvements need to be made, we might be getting there. It may not be immediate, but we might get there.
Okay, so for the NLC, I don't know whether to be more optimistic about things getting better, or considering the role they play, whether there's any way of getting it done. Dr. Odrosai, can we be hopeful that things can be better?
Definitely we can be hopeful, but I would also come in with a new school of thought that we should look at the appointment procedures. How do we get the leadership of the NLC? Yes, we should take government off. Government is an interested party here. We should have a fund, and as he indicated, and then that fund should have sources from all the interested parties. Government should contribute. Labor should contribute. Organized labor, the employers should also contribute. Who
will do the appointments for the committee?
The appointment for the. You see, once you have this tripartite committee, you have the committee. They should consensus. There should be consensus. So that they should advertise publicly. People should apply, and then you attend the interview. The panel should be made up of these key stakeholders. They should appoint you, and then you come in as the executive secretary together with the commissioners. So we have their neutrality and then independence guaranteed. If you are not very careful, I mean, security of tenure is important. Yeah. You see change in government, and you see people chasing the executive secretary out if it is going to happen. So I think that the neutrality and the independence of the National Labour Commission is very, very important in this matter.
Okay. Now,
see, on the issue of appointments, if I may come in. For instance, the chair will only be appointed on the recommendation of organized labor and the employers. The employers. Only the two.
Okay. How about the executive secretary?
The executive secretary, that's for the president. But
that's
you
a tricky one.
Yeah, but his role, I should say.
You mean that of the executive secretary or the chairman?
The executive secretary.
Okay.
His role might not be that key in the circumstances. I think the commission itself is a novel institution that is set up, and the whole idea was that let the workers, let the employers decide who should be the chair, and then they send a nomination to government. Within 60 days, if it's not possible for them to agree, let there be an arbitration where they will then be able to decide which way to go.
And you see, it's interesting that the commission, which is more like the chief arbiter between the employer, organized labor, and government, the entire process in getting this commission to function effectively will still come down to per the recommendations, arbitration. Arbitration.
Yes.
Interesting.
But
interesting.
A lot of times people view the commission as being on the side of government. Now, you've been there as chairman before. How much of an intervention or interference rather or pressure did you get from government at the time in dealing with some of these labor issues?
I wouldn't say that there would be any direct intervention from government.
Interference.
Well, interference from government.
It's indirect.
There are 6 commissioners. 2 are nominated by organized labor, 2 nominated by government, and 2 nominated by employers. Whenever there is a decision, there must be a quorum of 5, and we must make sure at least one represents one of the 3 tripartite bodies. In that sense, it is not easy for anyone to come and say that they're going to influence this or that way, or interference. No, it is not likely to happen. The only thing is to make a decision, and instead of compliance, sometimes you find that, for instance, government is not complying. What do? You
go to court.
You go to court, you may get an order that government should comply, but there's still no complying.
How do you enforce that?
How do you enforce that?
Do you know?
That becomes the problem.
Anyway.
That becomes the problem.
Okay. So I would say a big thank you to you, Dr. Odrosai, and also to you, Mr. Ayiti, for spending your morning with us as we celebrate Workers'. And let me say a happy Workers' Day to you in solidarity for the time you spent with us this morning here on the program. Let's at this point now cross over to the Black Star Square. The marching has begun, and as you can imagine, all the thrills that come with it, you'll see it live on your televisions right now.
1996, the TUC decided to set up what we call the Labour Enterprises Trust. And then the idea was that if Ghanaian workers use their might to help this country attain independence, then we could as well use our financial might to save this country from, to help industrialize this country. Now, so we tried to set up the LET, and Unique was one of the companies that was set out of it. Now, Unique is a baby of the trade unions, and if you go to Unique today, they practice good industrial relations practice. They observe them, they pay their workers well, they respect labor standards, and yet they make profit. You know, that is what labor wants.
What happened to LET?
LET itself is Labor Enterprise Trust. It was a trust where it's like a basket. Yes, and it is a trust. No, it was because LET was supposed to go, because it is a basket where you put all the resources there, and then you now begin to, out of those resources, set up companies. And Unique Insurance came out of LET. So when you talk about LET, it's like the whole basket. You have to now talk about what is in the basket.
You mean by season trade unions, apart from Unique Insurance, which will affect what other thing has come out of LET?
The first meter taxi to operate in this country was set up by LET. I mean,
What happened to it? Is it
well, it's still there. They're at the airport. So you go to, when you arrive at airport, you can call for it, and then when you sit in it to drive you to wherever you are getting to, you read the meter, and you know how much you have to pay at the end of the day. It is not like you are not aware of the rates and then someone cheats you and so on. That's what happens in Europe. That's what happens in the industrial world. You know, we also had the water tanker services. You know, and that one, when water was so in demand, we set it up. But it has fizzled out because when the water situation improves, it doesn't become profitable to continue to operate it. You see? So that is why some businesses, they are seasonal, you know, and when situations improve, they can't exist. You have to close them down. And that does not mean that they are not making profit. Yeah.
Let's take it for instance that the Ghanaian worker would like to invest in his future exports. Pensions. Don't you think there is a need for the various unions to find any way of investing so that sometimes when workers go on strike, they get time paid?
Yeah, I'd just like to take that briefly before Eddie comes in. You know, I think earlier on, Eddie pointed to the fact that we are the least paid in our sub-region. Ghanaian workers are the least paid in our sub-region. Yes, we're putting pensions, premiums aside. We would want to put money aside. But how much do you earn at the end of the day such that you can... I mean, generally, the salaries are not good enough, but it still doesn't mean that we shouldn't put money aside. And indeed, I'd just like you to know that there are some of the unions. We have a Public Services Workers Union, for example, that is doing Public Services Workers Union, for example, that has certain facilities in place for its workers. You want to, right?
Services Workers Union, Health Services Workers Union, and the GPRT, among others. But the UIC and rights, motor, fire, some assets, all risk, marine,
Public Services Workers Union, for example, that has certain facilities for its members. We also have across the unions, and it's not only the affiliates, the 17 affiliates of the TUC, but also the associates.
And the march past continues at the Black Star Square, the workers, and they're doing it in their own, in their own unique way. And you see the president smiling, waving intermittently. Look, it tells you about how passionate and different workers are. You may not be able to compare this kind of march with what you see on a set of march when it comes to Independence Day. They're totally different. And the workers before and after the speech are always in their loudest of voices, trying to make their voices heard, because it is actually their day, a day to take stock of a whole year of work and what can be done looking into the next year, 2017 into 2018, 1st of May, when we all converge here again and talk about their concerns. But let me return to the studio. But bear in mind also that we have our eyes and ears in every part of the country. We will bring you updates as and when we have them from Kumasi, from Tamale, from Wa, from Mogatanga. Wherever we get the updates, we will bring it to you here on GH1 Television. We're also live on Star 103.5 FM, also on Empire 102.7 in Sekani Takrade, all our affiliates across the country. And you can find us on Facebook. Look for GH1 TV. You'll be able to watch the show right now as we're beaming it straight from our studios here. Also, if you want to listen to us and join in on our conversation, you can look for us on the internet at starfmonline.com, on gh1tv.com, as well as on Twitter. If you want to follow the tweet and read rather than listen, you can follow us at GH1 TV, at Star 103.5 FM, at Empire 1027. Remember, the hashtag is EIB Mayday 2017. If you're just joining us, goodness, you've missed quite a lot. The president has already spoken. We've had a lot of conversations with Dr. Udro Sai and also Mr. Joseph Aite, the former national chairman for the National Labour Commission. I nearly mentioned Alice Aite. I don't know if there's a relation between my very good colleague here and Mr. Aite, who just left us. But joining us now in the studio to continue with our conversation is Mr. Kofi Davo. He's a labour consultant, joining us with his thoughts in red, signifying May Day. Very good morning to you, sir.
Good morning.
Happy Workers' Day with solidarity. I guess that'll be the best greeting to you, sir.
Happy Workers' Day to you too.
Okay, thank you very much. I am sure you can do something for Kemini. Great, great. So, you've listened to the president, didn't you?
Yeah.
Okay. Anything you glean from this speech that gives you reason to either be doubtful for next year or be hopeful for next year?
I'm hopeful.
Hopeful.
Yeah.
What gives you that hope?
One of the main reasons sometimes I guess things don't move is lack of leadership. And when you have a situation where the system is being driven by visible leadership, then you can't be confident that things can change. If
the way you put it makes me want to ask a question.
Go ahead.
Is it that we didn't have visible leadership before?
Oh, in certain areas we did not.
Which areas?
We did not. For example, we had these Galamsey problems. We all talked about it. Nobody acted.
Okay.
So
well, there was a task force that went around.
Oh, I don't think we acted.
Okay.
It appears to me we are acting now.
Okay.
And it doesn't mean that in the previous administration we didn't have leadership being exhibited in other areas. We saw it in other areas.
Okay.
But, for example, when you talk corruption, you want to see leadership in action.
Okay.
If leadership is not visible, if you don't see leadership setting an example, cutting costs, being efficient, nothing will happen. We will all pay lip service. And just like we've been described, all of us have become talkatives. We know the problems. We know what to do, but we are not acting.
We talk about it, but we talk about it.
We actually know what to do. We know what to do about Galamsey. We know. Everybody knows what we have to do.
When you look at the placards the workers are wielding this time, very little, agitations written on them, very little concerns written on them. Can we comfortably say that this could be the future over the next few years?
Or it's a honeymoon that they are enjoying
absolutely.
Now. Exactly. I mean, government is barely half 6 months old. Or barely 4 months old. So you want to give government an opportunity. So this is not the time for you to stampede government with agitations. It is just fair.
Is that a normal style that goes?
I think so. That's the normal style. I've been in this Paris for a long time. I was a trade unionist myself.
How many years have you been?
Oh, I was a general secretary for a union for 10 years.
Okay.
You know, for the financial sector unions.
Okay.
So,
your lots are a bit calmer. I mean, compared to the ICU and you know the other very vibrant ones.
I used to also be in the ICU. I used to work in the ICU.
Okay.
We left the ICU, and, you know, but intellectually they are not calm at all.
Okay.
Some people act with the metal.
Yeah.
More with the metal. Some people more with the mind.
Okay.
You know, so it's a mixture and a combination of.
Okay.
So what must government do to keep this honeymoon phase on for a long time, perhaps for as long as it is in office?
Yes, you've come into office, you've promised you do certain things. People would have to give you some time and wait and see whether you are going to deliver on what you said. So after some time, then people begin to question. You are not seeing anything happening. Then they'll begin to question you, but you said this, you are doing this, you said you do this, you are not doing that. And then the honeymoon then will begin to be over. So certainly the honeymoon will be over. The pressure will begin to mount after some time. And it is just fair that pressure mounts if after some time people are not seeing anything in action. It just becomes lip service, lip service.
But what would the workers want to see, really, to be an indicator of when the honeymoon is over for the president?
Will it be after June, half year, or by December of this year? Then you begin to do a certain kind of assessment and say, look, 1 year done, you promised me this much, you've given me this much, time for action. At what point does that snap element come in?
To ask for how long will be a little bit subjective.
Okay.
But people want to see you take steps. Governance is work in progress. You understand? So if people can see that you are taking steps and that we are going to get there.
What I'm asking is, you've been a unionized member before. What is it that you look out for? I mean, beyond the fact that increase my salary and all that, what is it that you look out for, serve as an indicator that, no, this is the point where we start agitating?
Just like I've said, some promises were made, all right? And if I'm a worker, I want to be sure I have tools for work. I want to be sure that all the things that are absent and for which government has promised it to deliver on are being delivered on, or steps are being taken to deliver on those things, and that some actions are being taken. You know, so if at point A you do an assessment, then you can come to a fair conclusion that given the time, space that we have, what has been achieved eventually going to take us to where we hope to be, and you'll be given some time.
Okay.
So an assessment to be made, and there's going to be that engagement and dialogue. Why haven't you been able to deliver on this? These are the reasons. And if the reasons are cogent enough, you'll be given an opportunity. So
I think we've even seen a little brush in the first 2 months as regards NAGRATs and their concerns with registration and SNIT and the finance ministry. Some names are supposed to be taken off the payroll. That became an issue between NAGRAT and government and SNIT. With these things, is it often just a case of the union saying, I am supposed to lead my people and take an entrenched position, or sometimes you see reason in the bigger picture, and so you're able to communicate the bigger picture to your members rather than pushing for tarry this decision or we'll take the tough measures and hit against government?
Okay. As a government or as a manager of the economy, you normally want to consult and engage before you arrive at some decision. But sometimes you don't have the luxury of time. So as a government, you make a decision and you get a pushback. When you get a pushback, you engage. I heard the president speak and explain. And government is saying that, well, if you think that your name has been taken off the payroll unfairly, come back and make a case for it. Sometimes you want to make a decision, get a pushback, and if there is an anomaly, you correct it. Sometimes you want to engage before you take a decision. In this case, for government, perhaps it was too urgent. We are losing about 36 million Ghana cedis a month. How long can we wait? So we are going to make the decision. If we are proven wrong, we'll revert and correct the anomaly if we've created one.
Okay.
In agitating for better working conditions, what role does the productivity of the public sector worker play in that, as you haven't been unionized before? What do you take into account when it comes to your productivity as a public sector worker?
You see, in the private sector, in terms of performance management, that's more very efficient. So when you go to the private sector, you can see the indicators. The objectives have been given, timelines have been given, the reporting lines are known, the inputs are known. So it's very clear. In the public sector, I'm not too familiar with the public sector because I dealt mainly with workers in the private sector. And in the private sector, you go to the banks and it's there. You have performance contracts signed with individuals, you know, where you have to deliver on some set goals and objectives within some time frames. And you are unable to do it.
You move out.
They put you on performance improvement programs after some time. You either want or you are kicked out.
Okay. Now, based on what you know from the private sector, and bearing in mind what we know about the statistics showing that well over 90% of the workforce is in the informal private sector. We heard the president say there should be a certain calculated attempt to formalize them. Is that a bullet solution, or it requires a lot more work than we're just simply putting it?
It requires a lot of work.
What does it require?
One, our data system is poor as a country, fundamentally. And I've always said that if we don't correct that, we don't have an identification system, we cannot regulate, we can't manage. Okay, you need to know what you are managing. If you don't know what you are managing, you can't manage. So you have a lot of people in the informal sector. You don't know their names, you don't know where they live. So you cannot help them, you cannot tax them, you cannot provide anything for them. That's a fundamental problem that has to be addressed. If we address that, and government knows its customers, who are the citizens, then you are in a position to bring them on board the formal sector. If you don't know them, how do you bring them on board? How do you, for example, offer them training and assistance in terms of management skills and all of that? You can't do that. And these are the things you're required to do in the informal sector to be able to bring them on board the formal sector. So you need to know them, identify them, know them.
How realistic will it be, looking at our informal sector, to want to rope everybody in under a particular data? I mean, you could have the identification system, you could have the national identification card, but when it comes to having a business, an informal business, how realistic are we looking at the picture of roping all of these people into a national data?
Let me give you one example. Let me use Gary Select, for example. You could choose, provide them incentives to come and register. Why are they not members of the Social Security Scheme, for example? Okay, so you provide them an incentive to become members of the Social Security Scheme as we have it in Ghana. Give them education, let them understand that when they don't have the energy to work anymore, that's what they will depend on. So they are on board. Once they come on board the Social Security Scheme, for example, they are known. They are known. You can tax them, you can provide them incentives, you can train them, you know. And I said tax and you smiled. I don't know why you smiled. But the fact of the matter is that I'll be willing to pay tax to government if I'm getting other incentives also from government. You know, and the supply side is that let people produce. If they produce and they are making money, they are willing to pay you the taxes.
Really?
Oh, yes.
The richest men the richest men we know in town are the ones who don't pay tax.
Oh.
Who like to evade tax?
No, they get around it.
Yeah, evade. Not avoid, evade.
Evade is criminal.
and I think that...
Evade is criminal.
Yeah, it is.
I think that SNIT attempted to rope the informal sector into, you know, the whole pension scheme with a 3% flat rate. I'm not sure how well that worked out, because if that woman who sells at home, she's an entrepreneur, she's in the informal sector, but convincing that woman to put away a percentage of her income, you know, in anticipation of a time when she cannot work, that is difficult to picture if you just make small profits at the end of the day, isn't it?
Yes, it is. But you see, sometimes...
So there is a point, the point I'm making is there is a level we cannot go to.
Yeah.
You can go to the Gary seller who sells ulunka in the market, but the woman who sells ice cream, pure water, and stuff like that, you know, finger foods at home. We can't get to that level.
It's because we are not customizing their needs. Okay. Look at how many people using mobile money compared to people who go to the bank to go and save.
Yeah, a lot of them.
The telecom companies have customized the needs of the informal sector. I mean, you talk to anybody, my mom will tell you, you haven't sent me your money. If you can't come, just send me through mobile money.
Yeah.
And then problem solved. Okay, you touched on the Gary sellers,
yes,
and the phenomenon of how we can rope them in. In fact, there's a small report that we want to play to you at this point. And we are still in the mood of celebrating workers, so you can appreciate why we're doing this. For Gary sellers, what they go through in bringing you what you love to do, be it soakings, the Gary shit, or whatever you require, here's what they go through as workers.
Which is made from cassava, involves a lot of manual work. The lack of state-of-the-art machine to grind and dry the cassava, as well as modern frying equipment, have prevented people involved in Gary processing to expand their businesses. After harvesting and peeling the cassava tubers, they are washed before grated in a grinding machine, which also requires so much strength to spark.
Because the thing say, this pack and come work as our bike away home, this pack and to the beer. We be say beer say but not free say electric one will, but the thing say, who could talk electric one now? A beer light bill and in the assembly because some may a man's aqua market, a bands or betioka. Yes, as will be on any penny na naire. Omo etia ka no change. Yes, as well. Na offend simple. Light bill need to an eba more. Untimin to obey some between penese. A jumana atosin.
The grated pulp are then put into jute sacks, which are tied and put on each other in a machine that helps in squeezing and draining water out of the pulps. The machine is tightened to enable it to squeeze out all water from the pulp. After some time, the dried grated cassava is sieved to remove the large particles and unwanted materials. The smaller sieved grains are then collected for frying. The frying process requires continuous stirring to ensure that the gari does not get burnt and also ensure it turns out crispy. Although gari is not a large export earner, it is steadily catching up as some producers nicely package their gari for exports. Some residents of Adeso who process gari on a small scale say the business can boom with exports increased if government pays more attention to the gari making business by assisting them with capital to expand their businesses.
Dry season say dry season. Mfasu osu nsu tomrem say rain season say. Mfasu bia eni sunsu onu na ye nduma fitia senti kakra obedi no. No anya mo kakra fi ho.
Gari can be taken as a snack in cold water together with milk and granuts. It can also be cooked in hot water and turned into a starchy paste and can be eaten with any soup or stew. For several other people, including students, gari is eaten with black pepper sauce, known as shito, and canned fish in schools. It is a staple that undoubtedly requires attention.
Now, much as you appreciate the work that goes into producing gari, you also have options after watching this on what you can do with your gari today on a public holiday. So let's return to the studio. Can we help Mr.
I can imagine a lot of things I could do with that gari.
Really? Anything that we didn't see on the screens? Like what?
Yeah. You can see me after the show.
Okay.
I'll let you know.
Okay. But let's continue our conversation on today and the May Day celebrations, what we can do beyond what the president has said in roping in those in the informal sector into the formal sector. Productivity is something that we always talk about. But how do we practicalize it? How do we get the best out of whoever is working on any sphere? Let's begin from the public service, since many of us always point in that direction and say we want more. Mr. Davo, what can we do to equal the call by workers for better conditions as against us giving the country a bit more in productivity? So when you say you want more, people will understand why you do.
In the first place, government objective through its manifesto is known. I mean, generally known.
Yeah.
As to the steps that has to be taken, will require some details, which we may not have.
Yeah.
But at least we know that government has promised that one district, one factory. Okay. One village, one dam. These are broad objectives. Now it is up to government to cascade these objectives down from the minister to the chief director to the ordinary worker in the ministries, where people are taxed and where they know that, look, but by the end of this period, we should be actualizing this. And this would have to be clearly defined. So people know what is required of them. The inputs are provided. And that requires a very strong human resource input, where you have a human resource unit which is aligned properly with the objectives of government or the employer. If you don't have that, then people will pretend to be going to work or will pretend to be working. Ask somebody at 5 p.m., what did you achieve today? I tell you, a lot of people can't tell you what they did, because he's not been told what he must go to the office to go and do. He goes to the office, his objectives are not defined, and it has to be defined. You know, so these are the problems we have. I don't know why we are unable to do these things in the public sector. I don't know why. But
you see, in the private sector, strictly profit oriented, and so you know that I'm doing this to bring in that. In the public sector, there are some institutions where there is profit that will use same. But in the institutions where there is no direct link to what you get in terms of outcome, it's difficult to then measure what productivity is when you're on the outside and it's not clearly defined. For instance, you made an example of the passport office, or perhaps it was in our previous conversation. Yes. So I come there, I have already bought the forms. I can't go anywhere else to get a passport. So I am obliged to come to you. I go to you for a passport. You put it there for several days. I mean, at the end of the year or at the end of the quarter, if you want to measure productivity of that worker at the passport office, what would you use? Would it be reflective of what the worker has been doing there? What can we do about a situation like that, linking directly what we do to productivity?
Very simple. Passport office example is a very easy example. They produce tangible goods, passports. Foreign ministers should be able to charge them and say that, look, looking at the rate of application that we have, looking at our resources, we should be able to deliver 100 passports a day. It's very, very simple. When I've engaged you as an employee, we've gone through all our inputs, all our constraints. Then we can agree that target, this is what we are producing a day, and I hold you to account. The profit motive is not core. What is important is that what are you supposed to be achieving in terms of objectives, whether it's money making or not. You know, so whether it's in the private sector or not, there are some core objectives for every institution that has been established. If you go to statistical service, government should be able to charge them and say that, look, by the second week of January, I want to have my inflation figures. I want to have them. Okay. You know, even though they are not profit making, I want to have them. What is required is that, oh, government, I don't have the inputs. That's why I would always go back to leadership. I would always go back to leadership. You know, we have had experiences in this country where even though the kind of system that were used may not be used now, especially after 31st December, you know, when a lot of force was used, everybody was acting properly, I mean, so to speak, because you knew that you were going to be met with sanctions one way or the other. You know, I remember people bought motorway tickets and immediately threw them on the streets. Those days, you were caught in the middle of the motorway. You were asked to leave your car, run and go and take your ticket and come back. So people were keeping their tickets in the car. You can't use these methods today. But what I'm saying is that when you have the leadership, and the leadership is insisting that things would have to be done in a particular way, we would achieve results.
Okay. Now, there's another leg to this conversation that I want us to look at, per what we saw at the Black Star Square today with the address. There's talks of workers getting decent jobs. When many in labor say they want decent jobs, what exactly do you mean?
ILO has a definition of what a decent job is. A job that provides you security, that balances work with social or family life, that provides you with job security, that gives you a fair wage, you know, and that ensures that you work in an environment that is almost risk-free, you know. So these are the ingredients of a decent
must
job.
all the boxes be checked to
Before
qualify?
deemed a decent job?
Oh yes.
Then there are not too many decent jobs in Ghana.
That's true. That's true. You know, so a job that provides you security, a job that enables you balance work with family life or other lives that you need.
With your social life.
With your social life, a job that provides you fair wage.
Stop relating. It's not helping.
I have said nothing.
Yeah. But again, if you then tell us what this is, then people will begin to ask questions. Will there ever be a time, considering the kind of variances we have with jobs, will there ever be a time when people will say, look, there are decent jobs available for people?
It depends on how all the stakeholders work. And that's why the trade unions are very important and key. An employer wants to use you for 20 hours a day. There are people who are working 16 hours, 20 hours a day, because nobody is telling them that it is wrong. For some organizations, there are no trade unions there. You work so long as your employer says you must stay in and work there. And that's why unions are very important and to balance the scale, you know. So if you don't have that, then people will act with impunity. In the same way that some workers, when given the opportunity, will not work, will not perform, but would expect to be paid fairly. In the same way, employers want to exploit workers if nobody is looking. Our regulatory institutions would have to be very, very, very strong. The Labor Department is there. The Factory Inspectorate Division of the Ministry of Labor is there. And these are institutions that must ensure that the jobs that people are doing are decent.
I see. Government, and then government also on the other hand, you know, pulls a few strings there, and then labor is back to the same spot. How do we ensure that going forward, now the focus is more about productivity, the focus is also giving the worker what is due the worker, and so in that regard, what would be your advice to the new administration on how to handle its labor related issues?
First and foremost, they must regularly engage, they must talk. And government must have its clear and set objectives, which should have to be very open and very transparent. Workers' leaders must know. The input should have to be provided. So people know, they engage, and individually, people know what they have to do on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis. You see, if people don't know what to do, and one of the things government must do I've said it earlier, that they must have the systems that are ensuring that the HR unit is very effective. They must have an industrial relations system that is engaging workers' leaders in negotiations, so that when we come to the table and we are talking with information and facts that have been made available. The law obliges both parties to ensure that needed information is on the table while they are talking. So you need to get these things and make them available. Be very transparent about it. There is nothing in public management system that you want to keep away from people, especially when we are running a difficult economy like Ghana. Maybe when we are thriving and there is a lot of money, employers want to hide something away from you. Not where you cannot make ends meet. When there's no money, I can come to you and say that, look, I can't pay this. So what I'm saying is that government must be open. Government would have to be transparent. They would have to set its objectives and make it very, very, very clear. The ministers must understand. The chief directors must understand. You know, and we must get the right caliber of people working in the ministries.
I think when we come back from our conversation, I would want to find out from you, from your perspective, why the single spine salary structure did not work as well as we thought it would. You know, dealing with some of these, labor concerns that have come up over the past few years. But Francis, you won't take us somewhere?
Yes. Let's quickly. Indulge me for just a moment. Let me just quickly take you to the Black Star Square. Kafui Day is joining us with some updates. The ceremony is ongoing, but there are a lot of things that you don't get to see on the main frame. Kafui, what can you tell us about what's happening at the square now?
All right, thank you very much, Francis and Kimini. Well, it's really hectic here. So what is happening is that the various organized groups are filing past in front of the dais, which is ahead of me, and acknowledging the chairs of the president. And the police are finding it very difficult to keep them some required distance away from the barricade. So you can see that you have so many people with their placards. I saw some people carrying a poly tank on their head. People are carrying food, bread, pineapples, bananas. But it's so many people who want to get their message across to the president. So they have written all manner of things on their placards, and they are getting too close to the barricades. So the police and the security personnel are finding it very, very hard to control them. But everything is happening in a very good-natured manner. So far, there's been no violence, and I'm sure you can have an idea of exactly what is going on around here. So many organized groups here: Malcolm, Dev Traco, Dynex, so many, and that's what is happening right now.
Okay.
This will be the climax of the event. After this, we will have the closing prayer, the national anthem, and the president and the dignitaries will depart from the Black Star Square right here in Accra.
Okay, now we get to see the placards from afar, but indulge us for just a moment. What are some of the very interesting, unforgettable inscriptions that you've seen on the placards?
Well, I've seen a plea for the GHOC MD to be fired. I've seen TV3, the 32 SAC TV3 workers who were making a personal appeal to have their case looked into. Right behind me, if you can see, GBC has the men and women to operate and maintain DTT. So people are using this opportunity to send their messages across. I see another one which says, revamp the agric sector, revamp the agric sector. So there's an appeal there, Oh, reduce overtime tax now. It's something I can read. Pay your TV license to sustain the state broadcaster. Make the one district, one factory policy a priority. So it's just a flavor of some of the things that are being written on some of the placards. I guess it's an interesting way to get some free publicity for your cause. So people are taking advantage and communicating their messages to the president. Finally, I see that the required distance from the barricade has been maintained, and so the police have done a good job. To make sure that everything is happening quite peacefully. I want to see if I can see a few more. Mr. President, please keep to your promises. One man, one market,
Did we get that?
I don't know, one baku,
No.
one tilapia. One man.
Yes, I think so.
One wife, one district, one factory.
Okay.
So some people are also getting quite humorous here with their messages. Labor Inspectorate Division must work. That's another message that I see over there. Zero tolerance for workplace abuse and harassment. Shame to Mawako. So there's a message there aimed at the Mawako abuse case that has been in the news for over a month now. Wahala, we need a living wage, not a minimum wage. And it's raining all manner of interesting things. Some of the organizations are throwing samples of their product. I saw somebody toss a loaf of bread at the general director of the media recently. The crowds are thinning down, which means that most people have filed pass already. I'm seeing Teachers and Educational Workers Union, TEWU of Ghana, TUC, Gimpa to Local, Mayday, Center of Excellence. So basically, this is what is happening, Francis.
Okay. Okay, Kafui. Thanks for that update. That's what we will not get to see if we're looking at the main feed that's coming through. But one of the placards I saw that really caught my attention was the reduce overtime tax.
I had no idea overtime was tax.
Kamini, stop that. you are honestly on a setting sewing this morning. Careful.
No, I had no idea. No, this is genuine.
Okay, it's fine.
I had no idea that, overtime...
it's taxed, yeah.
Really?
Of course, but it's time that you make money off. So yeah, it's income.
Yes, but it's my overtime.
Wow.
You should tax my 8 hours.
It is overtime as work.
Wow.
So yeah,
wow.
You must pay tax on it. But
well, you need to experience it to know it. So
well, yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
I agree. Anyway, moving on to other matters.
Absolutely.
That's fine.
No, I was talking about
the overtime tax.
Specifically.
Yeah.
But right now, let's talk about the single spine. We hoped that it was going to deal with all of our labor challenges and then, review it as time passed. But a lot of things happened when we started to implement it. Why do you think that we've had a lot of difficulties in using the single spine salary in solving a lot of our labor challenges?
First, we didn't manage the process of single spine well. And I think a lot of politics went into it. Just look at the time an outgoing president, President Kufuor, approved it and imposed that burden on an incoming government. Mm-hmm. We started a project. We didn't know how much the project was going to cost us. At the time that the outgoing president approved it and imposed the responsibility on the incoming government to implement it, he didn't know the costs. So we needed to have known the costs. How much costs are we imposing on ourselves? What percentage of that is our total revenue? Because in every corporate organization, you want to have a ratio of your staff costs to your total operating costs. So we needed to know that. We didn't know that. And then we plunged ourselves into it. And we started. Then all of a sudden we realized that we were spending beyond 70 to 80% of our total national revenue on public sector wages, which was just too much. So we didn't start well. The whole idea was good. The principle was good. I mean, I am one single employer. Ensure that the relativities are fair. The equity is good. Put them on one spine and then implement it. And the intention was good, but the implementation was not good. And that's why we had the problems that we had.
So what can be done to reverse what seems to be a curse of the single spine pay policy?
You see, first of all, if I am government, I would have a macro agreement with all public sector workers. And the agreement is that, look, we are not going to use more than a certain percentage, X, of our total revenue on staff costs. And that's an agreement I have with you. So if you want some more pay, it means your performance must increase. If you bring in 100 CDs, and I'm supposed to, the agreement is that I use 50% of that on total staff costs, then that's it. if I mobilize enough, say 200 Ghana cedis, it means that total staff cost is going to go to 100. So there's a relationship between your performance and how much I pay you. We need to have that agreement. If we don't have it, successive governments will be stampeded with demands that they cannot meet. And I've already talked about a strong HR factor. People must go to work and work. People who are engaged in the public service are people who are actually needed to do some work. Can we say that for sure? You know, are people working? Are we doing our manpower audits regularly to underscore the fact that it is important to bring people in as and when we need them in? Are people actually producing? You know, and the other side of the thing is that sometimes you see people go on retirement and they are giving contracts and they don't have any special skills. You cannot understand. They have slowed down. They are old now. They are younger people. You can pay something lower. Somebody that just come from university, you can employ him today to do a job. With time, you gather the experience. You pay him something lower than you would pay somebody who is 20 years in an organization. Yet the person is on retirement. You brought him in. You give him a contract for whatever reason. One cannot tell. So the problems are many. That's why sometimes we get scared that they cannot be tackled. But we can't tackle them if we take one step at a time. One other important thing is that there are things that would have to be looked at from, would I say, a bipartisan, because we mainly have two-party states. The parties must agree what direction they want to go on these things. Otherwise, we are not going to get anywhere. MPP comes, it does it differently. NDC comes, it changes it. If we approach public sector management that way, we are not going to have anything done and done properly.
I made a personal comment some days ago that public sector reform will be one of the major things that would ensure that our systems as we want it to be will run. But what will it take to do the reform? You talk about key performance indicators being one of the things that we should do in demanding productivity. But does it stop there? Because we have the local government services, we have the Public Services Commission, we have many bodies that have been given the task of ensuring that productivity is actually achieved on a daily basis. Is it down to the inability of these bodies to do their job, or we have a system that says if we fix that part, it goes against someone and so we will not fix it?
You see, we must be very professional in our dealings, because these are things that people have been trained to do. Remember, Dr. Parkus Ndong was a Minister of Public Sector under the Kufuor regime. You know, and I just asked my question: what did we do? What reform did we introduce? You know, so we should depoliticize a lot of the things we do and get the professionals to advise us as to what we should do properly. You know, if we don't do that and we come in, look, when National Health Insurance was established, and that's why we still have problems with the National Health Insurance, most of the appointments into that institution were political, were party foot soldiers. After some time, when another party came, it decided to get all of them out, and we have continued with that approach. I'm saying that the professionals must speak. We have left too much of a space to the politicians. So all we are doing is just do politics, just do politics. You know, so if we are doing things professional and the technical people have a big voice and a big say in what we are doing, you know, and it's only the politician who should allow that to happen. If they don't, then we'll still have this kind of problem.
Perhaps one way of achieving that will be to prune the public sector. Maybe we should downsize if we cannot manage how big it is at the moment. Will that solve the problem?
There should be a basis to do it. Somebody must do an audit. A professional must come and say that, looking at the work that you do, this is the number you require. And then the politician must have the
have we even ever done that as a country?
Of downsizing. And you see,
not even downsize, to have a performance audit, a proper performance audit of our governance of our public sector.
I asked that question before to the Deputy Finance Minister, Kweku Kwarteng, and at that time I was asking that the IMF had intimated that one of the things that had to be done was some form of rationalization and retrenchment subsequently.
Absolutely.
And so there were questions as to whether that will happen now or not. The response I got from him was that, well, sacking people is not an option that is being considered. But there are moves to have the public sector really assessed and audited, so that if people are not doing anything and they're sitting there and taking salary, a day will come when we'll have to look at it again. And if we have to find them a job, or we have to find a way of getting them to work, we'll do that. It looks as though any talk of retrenchment is kicked against naturally by labor. And Mr. Dava will agree with me on that, because it will mean that some people will go off the job market and will be jobless, will be unemployed. But are we also averting our minds to the challenges we face, keeping people in jobs when they are not working, and we're paying money for nothing?
You see, when you labor would definitely oppose it, but you would have to make a case for it. That's the point. And redundancy is always has its good sides. When people take money, they go to the other sectors of the economy. People have been paid off, and they are doing better than when they were working in the civil service or the public service. So once you can engage and make your case, if you approach it from a political point of view, then it becomes what we call a witch hunt. But then, if the professionals speak, the audit has been done, there is a documentation that is confirming that, look, these numbers are not needed. Then you need the guts as a politician to say that, look, I am going to do this. But it's going to be very difficult under the circumstances, given the kind of political system we are running, where politicians are chasing votes all over the place. During the PNDC time, it happened. Workers were laid off. They were paid off. Why did we go back to the bad old ways? Because then politics held sway, and we engaged, people were not accountable, and all of that, and we are back to square one. So it comes back to leadership. I would always have this problem of, look, the ideas are there, they are very lofty, but then if you don't have somebody to say that, look, this is how we are going. When the president said that, look, we are not buying new cars this year, have we bought cars? We have not.
None that we know of.
At least
something may have happened.
Let me take it on the surface that we have not bought cars, because I want to believe that the president was being truthful to all of us. So leadership is key in where we have got into. If we don't have it, we'll sit in the studios, have the conversation. In the churches, we'll have a conversation, but nothing is going to get done.
I think we've had quite I feel on the public sector. So let's turn attention to the private sector. Again, we'll refer to the ITUC statement where government should protect workers in the private sector. In our case, the laws are there, but people in the private sector, a lot of workers in the private sector are poorly treated. They work in very poor conditions. Some of the examples, as we read on the placards, are there are a number of those examples, and I don't think we'd want to go back to those placard statements again. But how does the Ghanaian government position itself to protect the worker in the private sector?
You see, it's a very difficult question for government. Government itself is an employer. Government is very careful how it treats the private sector. Because here you are looking for foreign direct investments. Now, somebody comes, he's maltreating its workers, he's maltreating Ghanaians. You are torn between, please shut down your investment and pack out. And then employment for your people. So a lot of the time, government finds itself in a very difficult position. We have enough legislation to protect workers. So I think that the law must work. The regulatory institutions are also not being funded. I heard Ms. Haiti talking about underfunding for Labour Commission, and it is true. It's a very important institution that was set up solely to protect the public interest, but they are not funded. They're supposed to have offices in all the regions. So they have it only in the head office in Accra. So if you're a worker and you have a grievance and you go to the Labour Commission, heaven knows when your case will be held. These commissioners meet once in a week on Wednesdays. So, and you can see the number of cases that are there.
To be fair, I think they made an attempt to decentralize early this year, but they had their own challenges with their workers on transferring some of them to other parts of the country. So there is an attempt to decentralize the Labour Commission. I just wanted us to make that point.
No, but I'm saying that this is after 10 years. This is after 10 years. And I just brought in the Labour Commission as an example. You have the same reason for the Labour Department, the Factory Inspectorate Division. To tell you, somebody made a joke that robbers were in the house and the policeman to take pictures of the armed robbers and send it to me by WhatsApp.
Was it a joke?
It was.
I thought it was for real.
Really?
No, so the funding issue is a problem. We must know our priorities. I don't think we are getting our priorities right. You see, we want the direct investment, but we must get the one that is qualitative, the one that is benefiting both the investor and the Ghanaian and the worker. That's not what we are getting. So people are taking advantage of Ghanaians and misusing them. And that is why each time workers have an opportunity, they also exploit the system. They cheat the system because they think that the system is cheating them. So if our institutions of state will work, if our laws will be made to work, I think that workers' rights will be protected.
But government managed to set sail the local content law, and today in our extractive industry, particularly oil and gas, you need to have a particular percentage of local involvement in there. I mean, how hard would it be for the government to determine that all the boxes that you mentioned earlier for decent conditions of work for any employee at all is also met? For instance, you make sure the institution is made in such a way that I am getting my proper balance between social life and the work life. I'm getting a proper balance of my working hours and my overtime and all that. What really is the difficulty in making sure that the private sector is adhering to those things? Because those will not naturally deter an investor, because wherever that investor is coming from, those principles are held high when it comes to the working environment.
You see, incidentally, for well-established global institutions, there are international principles that you would have to adhere to. So they will hardly abuse. The Barclays, the Standard Chartered, all those big institutions would hardly do things. They are compliant. And
pardon Mr. Davo for the reference to those companies, because he's from the financial sector. So those are easy examples to give.
Yes.
Yeah.
But a lot of the time, the problem may be coming from local. You have a budget where we are spending on every corner. So
cyclical.
Yeah. And we must hold governments accountable, because if you sit and you hear GDP has grown by 7% and you clap, I would want you to ask how many people were employed in the same year, because it's only when you have generated employment that then you can talk about economic development. Then people are earning income. Human beings, for whose reason we are developing the economy, are benefiting from the
Sometimes
economy.
you feel the numbers are far from the human beings in terms of 10% increase growth.
Yes,
but you don't see the human relation to
I want to see development more than growth. There's a difference between growth and development.
Yes.
Your economy can grow big, 50%, but how is the world being shared? How many people are being employed? People are not being employed. So we must hold. That's why in the developed countries, the employment numbers are key to their politics. But here they are not. Nobody talks about.
It's also because
we don't even know.
We don't even have a database to begin with to make you say that this number of people are actually without jobs. And it's good you mentioned that point, because in the run-up to the 2016 elections, there was talk by government that 700,000 people have been employed. You ask which sectors, they will point to certain areas. But people begin to have challenges in appreciating how valid or how true those figures are, because we are in a country where there are well over 5 to 10 or 15 million people whose names, details are not captured anywhere. So you cannot see the realistic value of what you present to all of us. It comes back to what you said about our identification and what we have to do and what we have to do going forward. Anyway.
Yeah. Sometimes when you talk about the problem, you realize that you come back to the same point where you started. It does not give you hope at all. I feel like it might just take us another 100 years.
No, that's too much.
That's too much. No, well, or maybe another 60 years to do what we have to do. Because I was reading about the United Arab Emirates, and they had a vision of where they wanted to get to as a public sector. A public sector that wanted to compete favorably with the private sector. And it wasn't to borrow all of private sector money, but it was to, so that if you wanted a service, you'd go to the public sector instead of going to the private sector. But look at us today. We got to the point where we had to privatize our what's it called when you need inspection, our car inspection system in order to get roadworthy, and it's working well. A lot of people would want to drive to the private inspectors
to get it done than the public.
Absolutely, and you go there and then it's by the snap of the fingers you have your roadworthy certificate. Should we privatize all of our sectors as well? It's impossible. It's impossible.
You see, when I have these discussions, I go back to the point where I say that, look, it's the kind of politics we are doing. For example, I've said that why should our president, our president is too powerful. He appoints over 200 district chief executives.
Ministers, deputies.
Ministers, deputies. And when, after doing that, he would again appoint so-called experts, 1/3 of them, to the district assemblies. 1/3 of them, after appointing the chief executives. So that's how come we take our politics so seriously as if it's life and death.
Because he has the ability with the stroke of a pen to appoint thousands of people to politically appointed nominations and positions.
So I ask my question. I am in a certain district. For the whole of the 4 years, I never saw my district chief executive. I never heard his voice. I never had the presence, fiscal or otherwise, of my district chief executive. I believe that if I was electing him, he would take time to look for me, not me as a person.
Well, that's coming next year, right?
We can only hope so. I'm so excited about it. I'm very excited about it because, look, it's very fundamental to our moving forward. Once you decentralize and you devolve power and authority to the local level, why should you be employing a doctor in Accra for a village in Tumu? So gradually, once we decentralize and empower the districts, then people will become accountable to the people that they are serving, and a lot of these things will change. Otherwise, all of us, the district chief executive, instead of coming to me to come and account to me, will take a file and go to the Flagstaff House to go and account to the president because the president appoints him. So there is a fundamental flaw in the kind of politics that we are doing, and if we don't change some of these things, we're not going to get anywhere.
Right, some 8 minutes past midday here on GH1 television. We're also live on Star 103.5 FM, also live on Empire 102.7. Around the world, you can watch and listen to us. You can watch us on GH1TV.com. You can listen to us on StarFMOnline.com. Yes. You can get interactive with us as well.
Yes. Ultimate 10.
Ultimate, yes, in Kumasi. Yes, in Kumasi. Where Enosafo has been bringing us a lot of updates with the salad English.
Yeah, the
not
salad
the
English.
We'll go for a break at this point. When we return, we'll bring you some more as we begin to wind down on today's celebrations at all the centers across the country.
Bank is an indigenous wholly private-owned bank, now in the prestigious Tier 1 banking category. Unibank is the third biggest bank in Ghana today. Unibank, caring for you.
Productions in partnership with GH1 Graphic Showbiz and Star FM presents Judas and Delilah. The Ninth Play by Latif Abubakar.
Why are you doing this to me?
What have I done?
Where from these packs of Yomi yogurt and Stars energy drink?
Judas gives them to me.
Why?
Because he supplies them to the mall.
Are you a mall?
Join this theater special live at the Grand International Conference Center, 6th and 7th May. 2 shows each night, 4 p.m. and 8 p.m. Get tickets now at 60 cities available at Unibank, Koala, Accra Mall, Junction Mall, Joy FM, Shell Shops at Airport, East Legon and Tema Community 11, Hacho and Bachona Total. Judas and Delilah is sponsored by Stars Energy Drink, Verna Water, Yomi Yogurt and Unibank. Media partners. Tickets hotline 0275 027 000. Glow Productions. Experience the best.
For 2 months. Building in this country is too difficult.
Don't worry, the National Investment Bank We Pay for Your Dream scheme can help you finance your building project.
Listen, NIB gave me cement, iron rods, roofing sheets, and other materials to finish my building.
NIB can also help you purchase your home appliances, your mobile phones, and your motorbike.
You don't even need to have an NIB account to benefit from the NIB We Pay for Your Dream scheme. No.
Just visit any NIB branch with a valid national photo ID card. And the best part is, all purchased products are at no interest.
Call NIB now on 050-145-1050.
National Investment Bank. Your business is our business.
Bank is an indigenous wholly private-owned bank, now in the prestigious Tier 1 banking category. Unibank is the 3rd biggest bank in Ghana today. Unibank, caring for you.
Welcome back. You're live on GH1 Television. We're also live on Star 103.5 FM. We're bringing you on parallel coverage of today's May Day celebrations happening across the country. We're live in every corner you can imagine. Accra, Kumasi, Takra, Bolga. Wherever you are, we are with you, bringing you the best of coverage. Let's now head to Osekrom, where Fufu is Bay and where May Day celebration is going on as we speak. Eno Safo is joining us from the Jubilee Park with some details. Eno, good afternoon to you. Is everything done or we're still at the final leg?
Yes, everything is done. It just ended here at the Jubilee Park right here in Kumasi. The regional minister delivered the keynote address, and he touched on a few points which I think the labor unions resonated with because they were very pleased with what he said. Some of the things he touched on was that government acknowledges the contribution of organized labor, and government is ready to address all concerns raised, including those on the placards which they were proudly showing to the regional minister, Simon Osei-Mensah. Another issue was that he touched on was that government realizes that they endorsed Nanado to give them decent wages for decent jobs, and they will ensure that that is done. He also said that the tax cuts are a positive sign of government's attempt to better the lot of workers. And lastly, the regional minister also said government is committed to reducing unemployment in Ghana, just as the theme, mobilizing for Ghana's future through the creation of decent jobs. Now, one thing that was very interesting that happened here in the Ashanti region was the small-scale workers union. They came clad in red, chanting songs that Mokasetia Galamseyers or small-scale miners, no, they should change their minds. In other words, or literally translated, means that if you have any bad thoughts about small-scale miners, you should change their They said that, yes, they thanked the president for opening their eyes. They're grateful for his initiative, but he should be a father for all, because if he stops galamsey or small-scale mining, they are at risk of losing their livelihood. They're also at risk of robbery, people entering robbery, as well as rural-urban migration. So that's basically what has happened here in the Ashanti region. As you can see, the various worker unions are leaving and moving around. There's a pork show which the regional minister is going to see. The Pork Farmers Association have set up a stand here, and the regional minister is taking a look at it before he leaves the premises. So that's what's been happening here at the Jubilee Park here in Kumasi.
So, Eno, if I got you correct, at the very end, you're saying that there is a pork show at the Jubilee Park in Kumasi?
Yes, there's a pork show at the Jubilee Park, and they've entreated all and sundry to come and have a taste of the pork so that we can stop importing pork.
So are you going to do that, Eno?
I will definitely do that, and I'll let you know how it tastes.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Eno Safa, for the updates.
Well, I particularly do not like imported pork.
Okay. But
Yeah,
you can
I like
tell the
my
difference?
ribs when
You can tell the difference?
Yes. When you get the fat tastes different.
Okay.
You could tell that this is frozen for a very long time.
Okay.
The rib also tastes different. Yeah. So
we have pork
and
experts
you know,
here, so yeah.
the local pork comes with it comes with its own flavor. The heat and the sweat and all of that. But the imported pork a lot of times comes from a very cold area. But let's go to the Black Star Square now. Kafui Day is giving us a wrap of events from there. Kafui, how are things ending at the Black Star Square?
I'm sure you're looking at the pictures because you have seen the ECG bring up the here as far as the match pass is concerned, and they had a very interesting way of making their point very clear. So they had two of their vehicles, the ones with the telescopic arms, where they had their men up there on a height with a variety of placards, basically protecting the concession that is currently on the cards for ECG. So various messages asking the government to reconsider the full concession idea. There was a message aimed at the U.S. ambassador. There was a aimed at politicians to get out of the management of ECG. And that brought to an end the march past. I must say the police and the army did a really good job in terms of providing security, making sure that nobody was handled or molested. And it's not to my, not as far as I could have seen or to have reported. It was really well done. There's a lot of trash here, to be honest, but I'm sure the cleanup crew will get through to make sure that everything is done. At this moment, they're just doing the national anthem. So probably I want to keep silent for the anthem.
Absolutely.
I'll wrap it up.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Kafui Day join us from the Black Star Square. Obviously, in a bit, Francis, the president will exit the square.
Black Star Square.
Yes.
I guess virtually that's it for today in terms of the coverage, because the celebrations at the centers have ended. But bearing in mind there's a pork show in Kumasi, I can imagine there will be an equal show in Takrady and other parts of the country.
Well, did
like the real
Takrady
celebration
ever
for workers.
take place? We don't know.
We never
if
got
it did.
to know, because of the rains though. But let's see how things play out. But you know that usually after these ceremonies, the real party begins.
Yes.
But unfortunately,
so where are you partying?
Well, I'm actually heading home. But you know that for many of these workers, because tomorrow is also a working day,
yes,
maybe there'll be a lot of moderate celebration going around. But Mr. Lavo, you are also a worker. How are you commemorating today?
Well, I've been invited to lunch with the president.
Oh.
So I'm privileged to be sharing with the president this afternoon. So.
And we didn't get an invitation.
It's all right. It's okay.
I told you, nobody's wishing the journalists happy Labor Day.
The journalists are supposed to be here covering what we are eating.
I'll take that as a good punchline for today. That's a good one. That's a really good one.
It's so painful. But before we go, just a quick reminder, our live coverage was brought to you by Unibank. Unibank belongs to the prestigious class of banks referred to as Tier 1. Today, Unibank, a wholly owned Ghanaian bank, is the third largest bank in Ghana. Now visit any Unibank branch nationwide and enjoy a variety of world-class banking products and services. Unibank wishes all of us, including the journalists, a special happy May Day, and Unibank caring for you.
Well, that'll be it for our coverage today of the May Day celebrations.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing your time with us from 6 a.m. when we began our coverage up until this minute. A special thanks to our guests also who came to the studios, Dr. Odrosai, Mr. Joseph Ayete, and now Mr. Kofi Dabo, who is a labor consultant. I'll leave you with these words from Judy Dent. He says, I think you should take your job seriously, but not yourself. That is the best combination you can have.
That's a difficult one to do.
Yeah.
When you have a job
it's a charge that
you're always saying, you're always at, that's yourself. So if you take your job seriously, then you're taking yourself seriously as well. Oh, anyway. I didn't lie.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for watching. It's time for us to go. Goodbye. We're back at 7 p.m. with News Tonight on GH1 television.
Stay with us.
Moment of silence.
I know you're out